Into the conflict in the Middle East. The Israeli military is now inside the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis, which they call a Hamas stronghold. Soldiers are engaged in what the IDF calls the most intense fighting of the war so far. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Charlie Daggett is joining me now from Tel Aviv with more. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning to you, Anne-Marie. The UN has called the situation in southern Gaza apocalyptic, and that the current offensive has ended any possibility of providing help to 2.3 million people trapped inside Gaza, other than call for an immediate end to the fighting.
Israeli tanks plow through the desert, expanding a ground assault the Israeli military says is now in the heart of the southern city of Khan Yunis. Trapped in this ferocious battle and increasingly cornered, hundreds of thousands of civilians forced from the north now ordered to evacuate Khan Yunis immediately. But aid agencies say they're running out of places to escape the onslaught. Also pleading for a break in fighting, desperate families of more than 130 remaining hostages who came to confront Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet, like Jennifer Master, whose boyfriend Andre was kidnapped on October 7th.
I want the fighting to stop.
They heard horrifying testimony from freed hostages.
And what did you hear?
They told us that they were actually very close to be dead from the Israeli bombing.
Karmit Katsir's 77-year-old mother was released, but her brother Elad is still held hostage. Taken from the same kibbutz where Lior and Noam Perry's 79-year-old father Chaim was abducted by Hamas. But they have had some good news.
The hostages that were released, they saw your father?
Yes.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
And what did they say about him?
They told us he's alive.
We then heard the conditions and the physical and the emotional state, and we know it's unbearable.
And that woman we spoke to earlier in that piece, Karmit, said this morning that her mother's health has deteriorated badly. She developed heart problems from the harsh conditions and starvation while in captivity. It was only when she was released she found out her 79-year-old husband was murdered on the morning she was kidnapped. Anne-Marie?
Oh, Charlie, this is really tough. What more are you hearing about, the conditions of the hostages? And we're also hearing some information about the alleged war crimes and, sexual assaults during the raid. Can you give us any more about that as well?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the hostages first, because I'm just looking down at a letter that was given to the government this morning from the hostage group, saying among the hostages, at least a third suffer from underlying medical conditions that require urgent medical care. The lack of treatment poses an immediate mortal danger. In such cases, irreversible complications, the stroke and heart attack. Many of the hostages suffer from injuries sustained. Remember this, during or after abduction, including gunshot wounds, loss of limbs, shrapnel wounds, and more. Mostly what we're hearing is starvation and mental and physical stress that they're under. In terms of the allegations or the investigation having to do with sexual assault, it is a very thorny issue here. It's something that the Israeli government and Israeli police and Israeli investigators are looking into. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the White House themselves have both said that this is something that the world must pay attention to. Now, gathering information about that is where it gets difficult. And not to be too harsh about the evidence, but a lot of the victims, alleged victims of these assaults, have died, which makes that difficult. And they're relying, we ourselves are relying on our own reporting for eyewitnesses, for instance, at that Nova Music Festival, who said that they witnessed sexual assault of victims. So this is something that is going to have to be investigated. It is already being investigated here, but many people are saying this has not only happened, but the world needs to know about it.
All right, Charlie, thank you very much.